Hello guys, welcome to Infinite Stories. Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. Let's get into the story. James deeply loved Cynthia. She was everything he wanted in a wife: kind, intelligent, and supportive. They had been together for years, building dreams of a happy future. However, his mother, Vivian, despised Cynthia for reasons she never fully explained. "Over my dead body will you marry that girl?" she often spat, her voice filled with disgust. James, torn between his love for Cynthia and his loyalty to his mother, always found himself choosing Vivian's side. Each time Cynthia tried to convince him to stand up for their love, he hesitated, fearing his mother's wrath. The tension grew unbearable, and Cynthia felt like an outsider in James' life. Vivian was relentless. She made James believe that Cynthia would bring ruin to their family. "If you marry her, consider yourself dead to me," she warned. James, unable to go against her, ended things with Cynthia. Heartbroken, Cynthia walked away, realizing that James would never fight for her. Meanwhile, Vivian had already chosen a bride for James, Jane, a woman she claimed was perfect for their family. Without hesitation, James agreed to marry Jane, convinced that obeying his mother was the right thing to do. He had no idea of the storm he was about to invite into his life. The wedding between James and Jane was a grand affair. Vivian beamed with pride, believing she had secured the perfect daughter-in-law. Jane, on the surface, appeared to be the ideal wife, polite, graceful, and eager to please. However, beneath her sweet demeanor lay a woman with an agenda. She had married James not out of love, but for his wealth and status. James, blinded by his mother's approval, believed he had made the best decision. Vivian, satisfied that Cynthia was out of their lives, celebrated her supposed victory. As the days passed, Jane's mask began to slip. She became increasingly distant, treating James more like an accessory than a husband. She never showed genuine affection and was more interested in controlling their household. James, though unsettled, ignored the warning signs. Vivian, still unaware of Jane's true nature, continued praising her. But Jane's patience with her mother-in-law was wearing thin. She detested Vivian's presence in their home and began plotting ways to push her out. Slowly, she started manipulating James, planting seeds of resentment against his own mother. Jane knew that as long as Vivian controlled the family's wealth, her own influence would be limited. She needed complete control over the finances, and to do that, she had to get rid of Vivian. One evening, as she and James sat together, she sighed dramatically. "James, you're a grown man now. Your mother still treats you like a child. When will you take charge of your own life?" she asked, her voice laced with calculated concern. James, eager to prove himself, began questioning his mother's control over their assets. Jane continued her manipulation, reminding James that Vivian was not the one married to him. "Your mother has had her time. Now, it's my turn," she insisted. James, blinded by his desire to please Jane, began seeing Vivian as an obstacle rather than the woman who had raised him. One evening, after a heated argument, James did the unthinkable. He stripped Vivian of all financial control and asked her to leave the house. Heartbroken and betrayed, Vivian packed her belongings. As she walked out, she realized she had destroyed her own happiness. The woman she chose for her son had turned out to be far worse than Cynthia ever could have been. While James' world was beginning to crumble, Cynthia had finally moved on. After her painful breakup, she focused on herself, determined to heal. It was during this time that she met Alex, a kind, confident man who saw her worth. Unlike James, Alex didn't allow anyone to dictate his choices. He was a man who knew what he wanted, and from the moment he met Cynthia, he knew she was the one for him. Alex showered Cynthia with the love and respect she had never received from James. He never made her feel like she had to prove herself or compete with anyone for his affection. Cynthia, though initially cautious, found herself drawn to his warmth and sincerity. Slowly, she allowed herself to love again. Meanwhile, James remained oblivious to the fact that he had lost something precious. He was too caught up in his new life with Jane to realize that Cynthia was finding happiness elsewhere. With Vivian out of the house, Jane no longer felt the need to hide her true nature. She became cold, controlling, and outright dismissive of James. She stopped pretending to be the loving wife Vivian had chosen for him. Instead, she focused on what truly mattered to her: money and power. She cut James off emotionally, treating him like an inconvenience rather than a husband. James tried to reason with her, but Jane made it clear that she was the one in charge now. "I married you, James. That means I have a say in everything," she declared. James, once confident in his decision to choose Jane over Cynthia, began feeling uneasy. It was only a matter of time before he realized the full extent of his mistake. Jane's true intentions became even clearer when she started interfering in the company finances. She convinced James to transfer full control to her, insisting that a modern woman should handle the family's wealth. James, still under her spell, agreed without hesitation. He ignored the growing discomfort in his gut, trusting Jane blindly. What he didn't realize was that Jane had begun transferring large sums of money into her personal account. The bank manager, Andy, noticed the suspicious transactions and knew something wasn't right. Unable to ignore it, he decided to call James, hoping to prevent a financial disaster. Andy's call would change everything. James was in his office when his phone rang. It was Andy. "James, I need to talk to you. There have been some unusual transactions in your account," Andy said, his tone urgent. James frowned. "What do you mean?" he asked, already feeling a sense of dread. Andy hesitated before continuing. "Jane has been transferring large amounts to an undisclosed account. If this continues, you could lose everything." James' hands clenched into fists. He had trusted Jane completely, but now, he was beginning to see the truth. Furious, he left work immediately, determined to confront his wife. James stormed into the house, his face filled with rage. Jane sat calmly, sipping her wine. "Where is the money?" he demanded. Jane smirked, unfazed by his anger. "Oh, you finally noticed?" she said mockingly. "I thought you trusted me." James couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had given up everything for her, and now, she was betraying him. Jane stood up and crossed her arms. "You're a fool, James. I never loved you. I married you for your money. And now, I have what I need," she admitted, her voice cold. James felt his world shatter. Without thinking twice, he grabbed her belongings and threw them out of the house. "Get out!" he roared. Jane laughed, not the least bit remorseful. "You've lost everything, James. Including the only woman who truly loved you," she said before walking away. James sat in silence, replaying Jane's words in his head. He had given up Cynthia for this woman. He had listened to his mother blindly, believing she knew what was best for him. And now, he was alone. For the first time, he admitted to himself that he had made a grave mistake. But there was one thing he could still do: apologize to Cynthia. He needed to see her, to tell her he had been wrong. He had lost her once, but maybe, just maybe, he could make things right. James finally tracked Cynthia down, his heart pounding. But when he arrived, he was met with a heartbreaking sight. Cynthia stood beside Alex, her husband, glowing with happiness. James felt a lump in his throat. He had been too late. Cynthia looked at him, a mixture of pity and relief in her eyes. "I hope you find peace, James," she said gently. James nodded, unable to speak. As he walked away, he knew he had lost a treasure because of his mother's influence. And there was no turning back. James returned home feeling empty. He had lost everything: his mother, his wife, and the only woman who had ever truly loved him. His once proud home felt cold and lifeless. He sat in the darkness, consumed by regret. He had believed he was doing the right thing by obeying his mother, but now he saw the truth. His blind obedience had cost him a lifetime of happiness. Meanwhile, Vivian was struggling with her own guilt. She had been so determined to control James' life that she had pushed away the one person who genuinely cared for him. Now, her beloved son was alone, humiliated, and broken. She wanted to reach out, but shame held her back. She had ruined his life, and there was no way to undo the damage. Vivian finally gathered the courage to visit James. When she saw him, she was shocked by how much he had changed. He looked tired, distant, and defeated. "I was wrong, James," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Cynthia was a good woman. I should have let you marry her." James sighed heavily. "It's too late, Mom. She's married now and happy. I let you control my life, and I lost everything because of it." Vivian broke down, realizing that her selfishness had destroyed not only Cynthia's happiness but also her own son's future. Meanwhile, Jane wasted no time moving on. She had always been calculating, and now, she needed another wealthy man to exploit. She set her sights on a rich businessman, pretending to be the perfect woman once again. She played the same game she had with James, charming, sweet, and innocent. However, her new target was not as gullible as James. He had heard rumors about Jane's past and decided to test her. He set traps, watching as she revealed her greedy nature. Unlike James, he saw through her facade immediately and exposed her publicly. Jane was humiliated, her reputation in shambles. James focused on rebuilding his life. He threw himself into work, trying to distract himself from the emptiness he felt. One day, he ran into Cynthia's friend, Amanda. She was kind and understanding, reminding him of what he had lost. Though hesitant, James found comfort in her company. Amanda, however, made it clear she wouldn't tolerate what Cynthia had endured. "If you ever put anyone above me like you did before, I'll walk away," she warned. James nodded, determined never to repeat his past mistakes. Cynthia and Alex's love blossomed beautifully. They built a home filled with laughter and mutual respect. Soon, Cynthia discovered she was pregnant. Overjoyed, Alex pampered her, ensuring she never lacked anything. When James heard the news, he felt a pang of sorrow. That could have been his life, his child, his family. But he had thrown it away. He congratulated Cynthia from afar, knowing he had no place in her world anymore. Jane, now exposed as a gold digger, struggled to maintain her lifestyle. No man wanted to associate with her, and her wealth was running out. She tried reaching out to James, hoping to manipulate him again, but he wanted nothing to do with her. Rejected and desperate, Jane attempted to swindle another businessman, but he had her arrested for fraud. She finally faced the consequences of her actions, realizing that her greed had led to her downfall. Vivian, still racked with guilt, decided to make amends. She reached out to Cynthia, apologizing for the pain she had caused. Cynthia, though surprised, forgave her. "I have moved on, and I hope James finds happiness too," she said. Vivian also focused on helping others, using her resources to support young couples and prevent them from making the same mistakes she and James had made. For the first time in years, she found a sense of peace. James decided to redirect his life. He invested in charity work, helping struggling families and young entrepreneurs. The more he gave back, the lighter his heart felt. He had lost love, but he was determined not to lose himself. Amanda admired his growth. She saw a different man, one who had learned from his mistakes. Slowly, their bond deepened, and James found himself genuinely smiling again. After months of self-reflection and healing, James realized he had developed feelings for Amanda. This time, he was careful. He communicated openly, making sure she always felt valued. When he finally proposed, Amanda smiled and said, "Only if you promise to always think for yourself." James laughed, knowing he would never allow anyone to dictate his choices again. He had learned his lesson the hard way, and he was ready to start anew, with his own decisions, on his own terms. As James stood at the altar, waiting for Amanda, he spotted Cynthia and Alex in the crowd. Instead of sadness, he felt a deep sense of peace. Cynthia had found happiness, and now, so had he. He had lost a treasure, but life had given him another chance. As he exchanged vows with Amanda, he knew he would never make the same mistakes again. This time, he was marrying for love, not to please anyone else. And that made all the difference. James and Amanda's marriage started on a foundation of understanding and trust. Unlike his previous relationship, James ensured Amanda always felt valued. He never let anyone interfere in their affairs, including his mother, Vivian. Amanda was different from Cynthia. She was independent and outspoken. Whenever James made a mistake, she called him out immediately, and he respected that. Vivian, now older and wiser, was careful not to interfere. She had learned her lesson and was happy to see her son genuinely in love. At family gatherings, she treated Amanda with respect, grateful that James had found a second chance at happiness. Cynthia was also thriving in her marriage with Alex. Unlike James, Alex was his own man, never allowing anyone to dictate his decisions. He cherished Cynthia deeply, making her feel like the most important person in his life. Their home was filled with love and mutual respect, and Cynthia never had to beg for affection. When their baby was born, Alex was overjoyed. He showered Cynthia and their child with love, proving that real love was about partnership, not control. Seeing her happiness, Cynthia knew she had made the right choice. She didn't regret losing James anymore. What she had with Alex was far greater than what she had ever dreamed. Jane, on the other hand, had hit rock bottom. After her arrest for fraud, no man wanted to associate with her. Her lavish lifestyle was gone, and she was left struggling to survive. She tried reconnecting with James, sending him apologetic messages, but he ignored her. Realizing she had no one left, Jane attempted to seduce another wealthy businessman. However, her reputation had spread, and she was rejected everywhere she went. She had no choice but to take a regular job, something she had always despised. The woman who once controlled a wealthy household was now struggling to pay rent. James had fully embraced his role as a loving husband. He and Amanda built a strong business empire together, and their relationship flourished. He became a respected businessman, known not only for his wealth but also for his wisdom. He often advised young men not to let others control their love lives. One day, James saw Cynthia at an event. They exchanged polite greetings, and for the first time, there was no awkwardness. "You made the right choice," James admitted. Cynthia smiled, knowing she had. They had both found their paths, and for that, she was grateful. Vivian, now aging, focused on giving back. She had learned from her past mistakes and dedicated herself to helping young women avoid the same struggles Cynthia faced. She started an organization to support women in making independent marriage choices, ensuring they weren't forced into unhappy unions. James was proud of his mother's transformation. Though they had both made mistakes, they had grown from them. Seeing his mother work so hard to make a difference, he realized that even the most stubborn hearts could change. One evening, James and Amanda were dining at a luxurious restaurant when they saw Jane. She was working as a waitress, struggling to keep up with the demanding customers. When Jane noticed them, shame filled her eyes. She had once lived a life of luxury, but now she was serving tables. Amanda noticed James' expression and squeezed his hand. "She's facing the consequences of her actions. Let it go," she whispered. James nodded, realizing that revenge wasn't necessary. Life had already taught Jane the hardest lesson. Jane couldn't hold back her tears after seeing James. She regretted everything, her greed, her manipulation, her arrogance. She wanted to beg for forgiveness, but she knew it was too late. She had lost her chance at a good life. James, however, felt nothing for her anymore. The pain she had caused him was long gone. Instead of anger, he only felt pity. "I hope she finds peace," he told Amanda as they left the restaurant. Jane watched them go, knowing she had lost not just wealth, but also the love of a good man. Years passed, and James and Amanda's love only grew stronger. They had children and built a happy family, free from interference and regret. James had become the man he always wished to be, strong, independent, and full of wisdom. Cynthia and Alex continued to thrive as well, raising their children in a home filled with love. They had no bitterness toward the past, only gratitude for the lessons life had taught them. They understood that sometimes, losing something led to something even greater. Vivian, now much older, gathered her family together. She looked at James, Amanda, and their children with pride. "I made many mistakes in my life, but the biggest was thinking I knew what was best for you," she admitted. "I'm proud of the man you've become, James. And I'm grateful you found love again." James held his mother's hands. "We both learned, Mom. And we both found redemption." Vivian smiled, knowing that despite her past mistakes, she had lived long enough to see her son truly happy. James stood before a gathering of young men, sharing his story. "I lost a treasure because I let someone else control my decisions. But life gave me a second chance. Never let fear or pressure dictate your happiness. Choose love wisely." As he spoke, Amanda smiled at him from the crowd. Cynthia and Alex, who had come to support him, nodded in agreement. The past no longer held power over them. They had all found happiness, proving that while mistakes can be painful, they can also lead to growth. In the end, life had given them exactly what they needed, and for that, they were grateful. That's the end of the story. What did you learn about the story? Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.